Hey guys, this is Michael Sewell with the Sewell Studios blog, and if you've been paying attention to the blog since the beginning here, you should have all of your parts ready to go to build your computer. So I'm going to do a quick overview of all the parts here. What you're seeing right now is the graphics cards, the video cards, the motherboard with the CPU already in. I'll talk more about that shortly. We got your RAM, that's 12 gigabytes, 2 gigabytes per stick. Got a sound card on the left, a fan, all the screws, your heat sink, and thermal paste. Hard drive, CD drive, your power supply, and the rest is all of my case. So let's get this thing ready to go. Alright, so we begin with the motherboard faceplate. Make sure you have it angled at the right spot, facing exactly where the ports of your motherboard would face, and just press it in from the inside of the case gently into the side there. Make sure it firmly fits, and I'll bring the screws over here. You're going to want to fit in all 9 screws with the typical ATX size motherboard. With a larger board, it may use larger screws, but make sure when you're purchasing your case that you pay attention to the size of your motherboard. It's very important because the case is form-fit to your motherboard. So at this moment, I'm just installing all the screws. I guess I'll talk about the CPU. So when installing the CPU, usually when you buy it brand new, it should have thermal paste already layered on top. Do not touch this. This is actually toxic to your skin. But with the processor, you'll open the little flap there, stick it in, and push or make sure you, of course, face it the correct direction. There should be a triangle indicating the right size and some prongs to help you position it correctly. So you lower the flap and then push the lever down until it's firmly in place. So let me finish up tightening up these screws here. I apologize if it's really fast. This video would have been an hour and a half long otherwise. So bear with me here. I guess I'll take a moment to explain parts of the motherboard here. The spots right next to the CPU, the black and orange spots you see there, those are the RAM ports. Below the CPU, the 2 ports you see are the PCI Express ports, times 16, specifically for video cards. Below those are PCI ports, which allow for the expansions such as the sound card I'll be installing. And what you see here is the thermal paste. You usually should not need to use this unless you get a custom heatsink, or if you are replacing the thermal paste after so long and you just decided to do it. So I choose the Arctic Silver 5 there, as you saw. You want to put a very small dab, very small. Just enough so that when you push the heatsink down, it spreads across in a thin layer all the way across the CPU, so it can transfer heat through the heatsink, and a fan will blow air through there to cool your CPU. So I'm going to fit that on there, just push it down fairly firmly but not too hard, and kind of rotate it a bit to let the thermal paste squash there. Putting down the bracket, this is a special heatsink I got. That bracket there will be screwed down with a couple of spring screws. The average processor usually comes with a heatsink that you just pop in. Much simpler. You shouldn't have to worry about this too much. The only reason I got a heatsink like this is because in the past I have overclocked my computers, which is basically increasing the speed of your processor beyond its regular limit. I've did this for rendering a couple times. It's useful, but it also causes a lot of heat, so I haven't been doing that lately. So as you can see, I'm screwing the spring screws here, the spring screws, and I should be finishing that up. When you're doing this, you of course want to do one at a time, just barely get it in there, get all 4 decently stable, and then tighten them. And of course you want to tighten them pretty much evenly too, like do, a couple turns per one, and just do that, all the way around until it's tight on each one. So I'm going to be installing the RAM here, just to show you kind of the specs you'll see when you're looking at RAM. You see the terms here, 1600 megahertz, that's the speed. 12 gigabytes, it's part of a kit. And the timings, 99924, those refer to how fast the CPU can access your RAM. So you pop it in here. There is a notch in the RAM stick. Make sure you have that notch lined up with the prong on your board. Now, when you're inserting these, I have triple channel RAM, so as you can see I did the 3 black ports first, and I'm doing the orange ports next. The reason for this is, as I mentioned in the previous post specifically about RAM, triple channel allows 3 sticks to run simultaneously as 1 stick of RAM. So pop it in there. You want to pop it in one side after pulling out the flaps, one side, then the other, and just gently enough to hear, just a light pop, pop, and shouldn't be anything more than that. So now I'm going to install the video card here. I've got 2 of them because I use multiple monitors and I play quite a few games. So you put it in the PCI Express x16, screw it down, make sure, of course make sure it's firmly in there, but the number one key rule when installing any computer part is if you feel like you're forcing something, stop. Pull it out, take a look at the ports that you're inserting it into and the prongs, and make sure that you're putting it in the correct position. If you feel like you're forcing it too much, the worst thing you can really hear is a massive, snap. You don't want to hear that. These motherboards can be quite expensive. So I'm inserting this second video card here, screwing it down tight. Make sure that they're, rather solid in there. Now, because I'm using 2 video cards, I link them so that they can both act together in games and other media. So you use what's called an SLI bridge. Your motherboard should come with one, but you can special order one as well for fairly cheap. And installing the sound card there is just as simple as putting in the PCI slot, tying it down, or screwing it down. And now, this is a really tough part, probably the most difficult part of building your computer here, is just knowing where to put these prongs in the right spot. What you want to do is follow your manual, because it's unique with each motherboard which spots go where. First one I installed there was just lights and speaker noises for, when your computer turns on and stuff, for the front of the case, the lights and all that. The next one there is the USB port. I'm plugging that in right now. And then the last one here is the onboard audio and audio that leads to the front of the case, the headphone jack and microphone port. Once again, pay attention to the motherboard manual so that you can know which spots refer to what connection. If need be, a quick Google search can really help when it comes to setting these up. If you search your case and your motherboard on Google, you might find the exact position that you need. So, just tightening up. My case here also has what's called eSATA. It's a faster form of USB, pretty much. It just has a connection plugging into one of the SATA ports on the side there. Those red ports right next to the video cards. And here I'm just inserting the fan on my heatsink after I've installed the RAM. And in a moment here I'll zoom in on where you plug the fan into so that it will be controlled by the CPU. So as the CPU gets hotter, the fan will speed up. The 4 prongs here in the bottom left, those are what you need to plug it into. That bump there, or flat piece, I guess, will match up with the connection. So just push it in there fairly firmly. Of course, you want to make sure it's pushed straight down so you're not bending the prongs. I apologize if it's difficult to see here. I only had the camera for a short time. So you push that down in there. In fact, you may want to do this earlier on, before you put in your video cards, just so you have less to worry about being in your way. So let's see.